This is the first video for the self-portrait drawing assignment. So what do I have on the screen right now? I have a printed copy of my photograph. And so if you're working from home, you should make sure that your photo that you're working from is straight on and that your face is fairly level so that your eyes are level with the edge of the picture. The first thing I'm going to do is we're going to make a measuring tool based on the width of our eye. So you should have some type of scrap piece of paper. So we gave this piece of paper out in class. If you're working from home, you'll just need any type of scrap piece of paper that you can work with. So the first thing I'm going to do, I want to find the corners of my eye. So using a pencil, so I'm using my 6B pencil because it's pretty dark. So I would use a darker pencil just because it will help you see your lines. I'm going to make a line at the edge of my eye, so where the edge of the tear duct is, and then I'll do it on the other side. And so what I'm marking that space between my eyes. Then I'm going to take my piece of paper that'll turn into a measuring tool. And I'm simply going to mark those lines on my measuring tool. So just in case the paper slips a little bit, you want to make sure that they're even. And so with this, I'm just going to mark this as the space or the eye space. So this is the space between the eyes again. And then with this space that we created, and so what is right between the eyes, we're going to divide that in half. So you can either measure the distance between these 2 points, or you can just eyeball it, as long as this space and this space are even. So that's the space between my eyes. Now, for some of you, this space is going to be the same as the width of your eyes. So we're gonna go and mark the very edge of our eye. So we're not including the eyelid. We're actually going to make this mark wherever you see the white of the eye end, which for me is right here. And then we'll do it on the other eye. However, I have this really bright highlight, so it's pretty difficult to see where that is. So if you have hair covering your eye or maybe kind of a bright reflection on glasses or something, as long as you can see one of your eyes entirely, like what we can see on my left eye, that's going to be good enough. So I'm going to take my measuring tool and I'm going to flip it over. We're going to make another mark, and this is going to be for our eye width. So I would go ahead and label that. And the reason I'd label these is that it can be kind of easy to get these confused once you start working. So I'm going to make a mark on my measuring tool here and here. So much like I did for the center or space of the eye. So I'm just going to draw this down. And so this is the width of our eye. Now we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to divide this in two. And we're going to mark this as half. And then I'm going to divide this space up. Same thing. So just try and put that mark right in the middle. And I'm going to mark this as 1/4. And then I will divide this space. And then I'm going to mark this as 1/4 also. And so what we have the width of our eye, we have our measuring tool, And so this is going to work once we start measuring everything in our face. Now you can use this and you can check it against your other eye. So for example, I can put it here. And so I'm lining up that corner of my eye with where my measuring starts, which is going to be right here. If you need to, you can like make it thicker on the sides or something just so you don't get confused. And the edge of my eye is going to be right here. And so we're basing that off of this eye measurement. So we can find that measurement even though, part of that reflection is covering it. Now, one thing to note is that if you're measuring and you find that maybe, one eye looks smaller or it's not as wide as the other one, that most likely means that your head is slightly turned. So if your head is turned, so for example, if like this eye is a lot bigger and this one is smaller, then that means more of this side of my face is showing, less of this side is showing. So it simply means that my head is probably turned this way. So once we have these measurements down, this will help us on our drawing. Now, before we start working on the actual drawing, what I'm going to do, I'm going to divide my face into two parts, both through the middle of my face and then through what we'll call the eye line. So I'll go ahead and mark the eye line now. And where that eye line is going to be, it's simply going to split your eye in half. So if you're looking straight ahead, that'll probably go through your pupil, most likely. But if you just kind of make that mark where the tear duct is, and then you'll draw it all the way across your eye. And then I'd go ahead and just mark it through the side of the face, and then carry this over. So we have this eye line that runs through both eyes, so it's splitting those in two. And then we're going to divide the face long ways also. And so a good place to kind of start marking this is find the very middle of your nose. So this is kind of like how we did our measurement tool. You're just going to split the nose in half. And then this center line will run through the middle of your mouth. So on your upper lip, there is kind of a slight indentation, or it may be a little more pronounced. So that center line will run through the middle of your upper lip. And then it'll just continue all the way down to your chin. So if you find that when you're doing this, if your head is turned a little bit to the left or right, this line probably isn't completely straight. It's probably going to have a little bit of a curve to it, which is fine. You're just going to have to kind of work with it as you're drawing. So we're going to go to the sketchbook now. So we're going to go to our paper. We're going to zoom out. And we're just going to focus that. So now what we're going to do, we're going to start by drawing this center line through the face on our paper. So in your sketchbook, all you have to do is just simply draw a line that goes down the very middle of your page. So you can use a ruler, you can just estimate where that is, but the center line is going to be important and make sure it's parallel with the edges of your paper. And then our next step, we're going to draw the eye line. So one thing you do not want to do, don't just put the line directly in the middle. It's going to be a little bit higher up. So if you have your your photo right next to your sketchbook. Just kind of look and see where that line is going to be. And we're drawing these images as a one-to-one scale, meaning when your drawing is finished, it's going to be the same size as your photo. And this line doesn't necessarily have to go all the way across. So it'll probably end up looking kind of like a plus sign or kind of a cross type shape. So once you have this cross or plus on your paper, you're ready to start using your measuring tool so you can find out where all of your measurements are going to be. So the first thing I'm going to start with, I'm going to start with the side that I measured as eye space or space between the eyes. So we have this center line in the middle, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to measure or mark this right here. So the center line on my measuring tool should line up with the center line that I drew in my sketchbook. And I'm then going to replicate these dashes that I had on my measuring tool. I'm just going to put those on the paper. And so right here we have where the space in between our eyes would be. So now we're going to take our measuring tool, flip it over to where we have our eye width side. And if you remember, this is the line that we started with. And then this was the edge of our eye. Using this line, so I'm going to start with my left eye first. I'm going to line that line up with that dash that I just made. And then make the edge of my eye dash or space. And so my eyes are going to go in this space. I'm going to carry this over and do the same for my right eye. So in these two spaces, this is where you would have your eye and where you would draw your eye. Now, once we start drawing our eye, we're only drawing kind of that outer shape of the eyeball. Again, we're not including like the eyelid fold or anything yet. So we're really just kind of drawing that shape, very similar to how we started drawing the eye with those practice drawings. So we'll start with my right eye. And we'll start with my left eye since we can see more of it. So my eye again is going to go in this space. So you really want to pay attention to how, for example, your tear duct is shaped and just kind of the overall arc of your eye. And then you also want to pay attention to where is that eye line? So how much of your eye is seen underneath this eye line and how much is above? And so I do have part of my eye underneath this eye line, so I'm going to include that. And then on my eye, it makes its way up. And then we have the tear duct right here. So there's the placement of my left eye, and then I'm going to do the same for my right eye. So one thing that is kind of common that happens is you have one eye, it looks great, and then you start drawing the other eye, and it doesn't really look how you want. Sometimes what happens is it's maybe too big or too small, or just the shape isn't correct. So one thing you can do to ensure that the height is the same is wherever I have the bottom part of this eye, I just very lightly sketch, a line that's parallel with my eye line. What that does, it tells me how far down this curve needs to come, and then I can do the same at the top. So I'm just very lightly going to sketch another line that's parallel to the eye line this way. So now when I draw my right eye, it's going to be a lot easier because I have those places marked. So I'll start with my tear duct again. And even though I can't see all of my eye because of that, redraw my eye line a little more clearly, had several sketch lines. So even though I can't see all of my eye on the edge, I know what the shape is because I saw how it was shaped on this side. So again, we're just drawing kind of the inside portion of the eye where the sclera or the white of the eye is, and then where the pupil and iris can be found. So once you have that basic shape of your eyes down, go ahead and draw in your irises and your pupils. Don't worry about the shadows and the shading quite yet. That'll be one of the last things that we do. So just really notice how much of the white of the eye can be seen on both sides. So on my eye, I have more of the white over here than I do in the corner. Notice where your iris is. Is it kind of floating? So there's some white underneath here, or is it like mine where it's like partially covered by this bottom eyelid? So I'm not going to worry too much about my details right now. Really, what I need to find, I need to just really focus on where the pupil is and where the irises are, because that'll help the placement of the nose and the mouth. And so my pupil is right on that eye line, maybe a little bit above it. So I'll just sketch that circular shape of the pupil. And then we'll create the other eye. So another thing that you want to kind of pay attention to, you don't and try and put your pupil and the irises in the same spot. You wouldn't want to draw like your iris all the way over here because then it looks like one of your eyes is like looking off to the corner. So I have my pupils and irises in right now, have the placement of my eyes. So the next thing I want to do is find out where is my nose. So this is where you're going to come back to your eye width tool, but this time we're going to turn it on its side and we're going to measure down from our eye line. So what I want to find, I'm going to find the very bottom portion of my nose. So this may be the tip of your nose. It may be the lower portion of your septum. Main thing is we're just trying to find kind of like an edge to make a mark on. So what I'm going to look for, I'm going to look for where my nose stops, which is here. So that's the tip of the nose. So using my eye measurement tool, I'm going to start with the very edge again, and I'm going to line that up with my eye line. So there is one full eye width, and I'm going to make a mark here. So this is one eye width right there. And then I'm going to see how far down the tip of the nose is. And so the tip of my nose is almost to this 1/4 mark. So we could say that from my eye line to to the tip of my nose, it's 1 and 1, 2, 3/4. So almost 1 3/4 eye width. So if I need to, I can just make kind of a tiny dash here to remind myself that's roughly where my nose is going to stop. So we'll go back over to our drawing. Start with this line. I'm going to put it on my eye line. And I'll just put a little dash here. So there's 1. And then, like I said, my nose was 1 3/4 down, almost 1 3/4 down. There's 1, 2, and we'll just mark it right here. And so the very tip of my nose is going to be right here. So I don't want to get confused with all the markings as I'm working on my drawing. So you can always like erase little tiny marks that you don't need anymore. So like this one, I won't need that anymore. So I'm just going to take that away. If you need to, you can just sketch that line back. And so now I need to find out how wide is my nose. So on my drawing, I'm going to look for the edges of my nostrils. So we can see that this nostril stops right here. So I can make a mark. And then on the other side, we'll just put another pencil mark at the edge of that nostril. And we're going to see where these lines match up. So we're going to look at where the edges of the nose are in relation to the eye. Now you can also use another technique and simply use your eye measuring tool and just find the distance from here to here. So interesting enough, like from the center line in my head, kind of starting with that first line again, my nostril comes out almost to that 3/4 mark again. So we'll check it on the other side, see if it does the same thing. So on the other side of my face, it does the same thing. It almost um, comes over to that same line. Now, if you're trying to like line it up with different features, so for example, if I just create like a straight line going upward, the edge of my nose lines up kind of like where my tear duct would start, or I guess stop. So it's on the inside portion of my eye, and it'll probably line up the same on the other side. So I'm just creating a vertical line that's parallel with this. So you could really do either measuring technique. So for example, like if I'm trying to find up where it lines up with, it was roughly right here. So I can just create another straight line that's parallel to that center line. Or you could use the eye width measurement and check that. So that's pretty much where I had that mark, maybe a little bit further out. And we'll check the other side. So that looks like that's in the same place too. So once we have the widths marked, you want to kind of think about how you're going to draw your nose. So you're basically going to draw it kind of in like a box. And so if we look at that based on our sketch, so there was the end of my nose, you would simply just draw the shape of your nose in this space. So things you want to look for are how far down do your nostril wings come down, or the wings of your nose. So for example, on mine, the wings almost come down to the same point or line as the tip of my nose. They're just slightly above that. So in that case, I know where those are going to be. Also, kind of take note of how high up are the curves of your nostrils. So that's another thing that you can simply just use your measurement tool to find. So from the tip of my nose to kind of like where the height of my nostril openings are, it's about 1/4 of an eye width. So in that case, I can just take my measurement tool and I know that the openings in my nostrils will be like right here, and then the same on the other side. And then after that, it's just a matter of drawing that shape of your nose. So I'm going to look at my photo and just kind of get that basic shape down. Again, I'm not really worried about shading right now because we'll come back to that later. I'm basically just connecting the tip of my nose to those lines that I created. And I'll draw the curve of my nostril wings. Okay, so I have just basic shape of my nose in right now, and then when I come back in and do all my values, it will look a little more accurate. So next step, we're going to find where the mouth is going to begin. So my mouth is a little hard to see just because of my beard, so we'll just kind of estimate, but it'll still give you an idea of how you'll need to mark your mouth. So I can measure a couple different things. I can measure like my mouth line. So that would be where the upper lip and the bottom lip meet. I can measure and find where my bottom lip ends. And so this is the vermilion ridge. So that's where the color of the lip stops and the skin begins again. And then, of course, I can measure the top part of my lip, which is a little more difficult to see here because of the beard, but I kind of know where it is on my face. So using my measurement tool, I'll go back to my eye width and I'm going to measure from the tip of my nose to where that top of my lip would be. And so this is almost, again, 3/4 of an eye width. So it's just a little bit short of that. So I'll make that measurement on my paper. So it's about right here. So this is going to be where the top part of my lip is. And I'm going to find where my mouth line is. So I'm going to measure from, so I can measure from like the top part of my lip that I marked. I could also measure from the tip of my nose. So it's from the top part of my lip to that mouth line. It's just a little bit less than 1/4 of an eye width. So it's probably about right here. So this is going to be my mouth line. And last measurement, I need to find where the bottom part of my lip is. So again, we could just measure straight down from the tip of my nose, or you can measure from the mouth line. And so that is just at maybe slightly more than 1/4 of an eye width. Oops. So you can see it a little more clearly here. So this measurement would probably be, so I know that this is the bottom of my bottom lip. This is my mouth line, and then this is going to be the top part of my mouth. So again, I would go ahead and kind of sketch these features in. However, before you can really do that, you have to look and find where the corners of your mouth are. So again, like it's kind of hard to see on mine because of my beard, but I know it's going to end right here, and then it's going to end right there. So again, we can measure from the center line. You could also measure upward toward, to see what it lines up with. So, if you use a straight edge, this is pretty easy to see. And so we'll measure on this side. So where I marked this line, it's lining up with the edge of my iris. So that's why we put the iris in. And then on the other side, we'll just double check that. It's measuring with, or lining up with the edge of the other iris. So the inside portion of the iris. So I'm going to go ahead and use those measurements. So I have the edge of my iris here. Then we'll measure the other side. So basically what I have this like kind of box. So it's kind of like the nose. You kind of have like a box or space that you have to create your mouth inside. And then from this point, you'll just sketch out the shape of your lips. So got to remember that this top portion, I measured the top of my lip. So I have to take into account that Cupid's bow that dips down just a little bit. And then this is going to be the edge of my mouth where the lip stops. And I have my bottom lip. And then for the mouth line, there's a little bit of a bow. So it dips down just a little bit. It kind of curves up and then back down. So again, we're just working with our basic placement and our overall shape of our features. So the next part I'm going to find, or that you'll need to find on your drawing, you want to find out where your chin is. And so that's where your chin is going to stop. So, on mine, I can't really see my chin, obviously, because of the beard. But I do know just from past drawings that from my bottom lip to kind of the bottom portion of my chin is about, I think it's 1 1/4 of an eye width, if I remember correctly. And so I would mark that on my paper. So we'll just kind of go with that as my measurement. But for your own drawing, of course, just find that line that you marked for the bottom of your lip. And then on your drawing, make that measurement of how far down your chin is, and then make your mark on the paper. So we'll just go with 1 1/4 eye width because I believe that's what mine normally is when I don't have a beard. So there's 1, and then 1/4. So the bottom portion of my chin is going to be right in this area. Now, in my case, I would not even worry about my chin. I would want to measure from the bottom of my lip down to like roughly wherever my beard stopped. So I can even find that. So we'll measure down. All right, so what I found from the bottom of my lip to wherever my beard stops is 2.5 eye widths. So I can find that on my drawing. So there's 1, 2, and oops, a half. So I know, like, I can just sketch this in really rough. My beard is going to be right in this area. So that's where the placement of my beard will be. So I'm going to go ahead and take away my chin marking since you can't even see my chin. And the next thing we want to find, so you could really kind of go a couple different directions. What I'm going to do, I'm going to try and find where my eyebrows are supposed to be. So you can make a couple different measurements, and we're going to base that off this eye line right here. So I'm going to find where the bottom of my eyebrow is and where the top is. So using my measuring tool again. So the bottom of my eyebrow is 1, 2, 3. So it's 3/4 up from my eye line. Go back to my eye line right here and just make a dash at the 3/4 mark. So this is the bottom portion of my eyebrow. And then we'll find how tall my eyebrow is. So the height of my eyebrow is just a little bit more than 1/4 of an eye width. So that tells me that my eyebrow will be about that tall. So we'll just kind of make that mark. And then you'll want to see, where does your eyebrow start? So what I'm seeing on my face is that my eyebrow is starting about here. And so we're counting the eyebrow hair where it's like kind of the thickest. You probably have like some like stray eyebrow hairs or whatever. And then we can kind of see how far away is that from our center line that we originally sketched. So it's a little bit less than half on my face. So here's my halfway mark. Here's where I would want to start. And then after that, we can kind of just get that rough eyebrow shape in. And then you'll want to notice, where does your eyebrow stop? Can't really see too clearly because of my glasses, but it's obviously going to be in this area. So it's probably, it looks like half an eye width away from the corner of my eye. And so really as you're working, as long as you have this measuring tool, you can pretty much use it to find any type of measurement on your face. So like my eyebrow would probably stop in this area. So like with my eyebrow, it kind of arcs up a little bit and then starts to curve down. So roughly like that. And then you would do the same on the other side for your other eyebrow. So, and you can see on my photo, eyebrow shape is a little bit different. I just know from drawing my portrait quite often that this eyebrow is a little bit darker than this one. So whenever I start working with my values, yeah, the values for the eyebrow textures are just going to be a lot lighter for this eyebrow. Now, I can do all this measuring again for this eyebrow, but I can also just kind of look and see, well, this one is basically starting in the same place. Not nearly as high though. So the left eyebrow doesn't come up nearly as tall. So I can just kind of keep that in mind once I place this, but essentially just kind of do the same thing. You can work with parallel lines. So this eyebrow will start roughly in this place, but it's not going to come up nearly as tall as this one. So if I work with those parallel lines, I just know that I can't come up that high with my pencil marks. It's going to be a little more sparse. And it looks like this is kind of ending in the same spot. So it's about right here. I'm going to go ahead and measure this though, just so it's accurate. So this is a little bit shorter. So it's about a quarter of an eye width where we see this stopping. So it's a quarter of an eye width away from the corner of my eye. So it's going to stop kind of in this area. Now, most of it is because it just disappears behind my glasses. So once I start drawing my glasses in, I'll want to think about that. So the next measurement I want to find is, so there's actually two we're going to mark up here at the very top. We're going to mark where the hairline is and then where the very, very top of your head is. So like with my photo, obviously I don't have a whole bunch of hair up here, but make the marking at the hair. So it just kind of depends on how you're wearing your hair right now or in the photo. Also, you may have bangs. So like if your bangs, for example, are like swooping down this way, just kind of find where the bangs touch the center line, and then where like the top part of your hair would be. So measuring mine, I just use this eye measuring tool again on my photo. So my hairline is right here. And then the top part of my head, including the hair that you can see, is right there. So I'm going to measure up from my eye line. So there's 1 eye width, 2, and 3. So from my eye line to my hairline is 3 exact eye widths. So we'll make that mark on my paper. So starting with my eye line right here, there's 1, 2, and 3. So right in this area, this is going to be where my hair is starting. So then we'll find the very top of the head. And so I'll just measure up from where I mark that hairline. And from my hairline to the top of my head is 3/4 of an eye width. So the very top portion of my head would be right here. And so that's the apex or the highest point of that curve of my head, or my skull, I guess, since I don't have too much hair up there. Now, so we have kind of this floating collection of facial features, but we haven't really found out how wide the head would be so far. So that can be done by simply measuring. So I would go ahead and just measure from the corner of your eye to the so you can measure a couple of things from the corner of your eye to like where your the skin on your face stops. So again, you may have like sideburns, you may have hair hanging off your face right here, or kind of like parted right here. So just find wherever your skin stops. So using my measuring tool, I'm measuring from the corner of my eye to where my skin stops and where my sideburn starts. So that's one full eye width. And then we're just going to check this on the other side. Again, where my eye stops and my skin starts. So on this side, it's a little bit shorter. So it's not a full eye width, but it's a little bit past 3/4 of an eye width. So I'm going to come over here and make that mark. So on this side, it was one full eye width. So I know that this is the side of my head. And on this side, it's a little bit shorter. So that tells me my face was probably turned just a little bit. So they weren't quite even. Now, I have this other portion of my face that I'll need to find. So it's kind of in the area of the cheek. Typically, what I will do is, so like on yours, you'll probably want to find, the side of your face where your cheek stops. What I usually do is I find that corner of my mouth or the corner of the mouth that's marked and just measure straight over. And so it's kind of like a game of connect the dots. You have like all these little dashes, and then you eventually just kind of connect everything with sketch lines. So for example, I'm going to measure here to, I can't really see where my cheek stops. It's all beard. So I'll just measure to where that beard stops. So starting right there, there's one eye width. And my beard's stopping right here. So it's 1 3/4 eye widths over on that side. So starting with the corner of my mouth, there's 1, and there is 3/4. So my beard roughly is kind of stopping in this place. Now this part is a lot wider than right here, but we also have to keep in mind that my sideburn kind of starts to curve in right here, and you can really see how much further out the beard sticks out in this place. And so once I have that marked, knowing that this kind of curves in, and then there's a little bit of hair right here, and then the beard starts to kind of make its way over. Now we also have the ear that we'll need to add. I may go ahead and measure the other side of my face though. So again, like where the cheek would be. So you'll do the same on the other side. Just take your measuring tool and find out how far over your cheek is going to be. So there's 1. And then again, I'm just going to find where my beard stops. And it's almost 2 full eye widths on that side. So there's the corner portion of my mouth that I originally marked. I didn't really mark my mouth too clearly though. So it's 1 and 2. So approximately my beard is going to be over in this area. And again, same thing kind of happens, like kind of have this curve right here where my skin stops, and then there's a little bit of hair or sideburn, and it kind of goes out just a little bit for the rest of that beard. So let's find where our ears would be and how to mark the ears. And with the ears, this is really just a matter of trying to find what else they're lining up with. So, for example, like on this side, this ear is obviously above my eye line, and it's pretty much in line with the top part of my eye. So I already have that drawn. So that's going to be pretty simple to find. Now let's check the other ear. Now, with this ear, it's not nearly as tall. So again, I know this just from drawing myself that one of my ears is actually taller than the other. So as you're working on your portrait, you're probably going to notice little nuances about your face that you may not have noticed before. So with this is really kind of it's about as tall as like where my pupil is. So there is a little bit of a difference in terms of my ear height. Now, I do know where the top part of my eye is, where the opening would be. And I actually have that line already marked. And so I know my ear in the top portion is going to be in this area. So I'm just going to create a curved line just to kind of mark that for right now. And then on the other side, so if this is the top part of my pupil, I can just sketch a line going over. And I know that the top part of this ear is going to be over here. Now, before we can proceed further, we need to find out where our ears are lining up on the bottom. Now, I can kind of see where the ear stops on this side. It's not as clear over here. There's a little kind of like sliver of the ear that you can see right here. If your hair is covering your ear, don't worry about it. So you simply wouldn't draw your ears. So let's double check to see where this is lining up. So my ear is just a little bit, yeah, just slightly below that mark I made for my nose. And on this side, so there's the edge. It's kind of in the same spot, maybe a little bit lower, but that would make sense because I already know that this ear is a little bit lower than the other ear. So keeping this in mind, here's the tip of my nose. If I just sketch that line over, again, I know that this ear is probably going to stop just a little bit below there. I can't even see my earlobe all the way because of the beard. And then on this side, it's going to be a little bit lower than that. So again, if I sketch a line over here this way, this ear looked like it was kind of stopping and disappearing in that space. So once you have the top and bottom of your ears marked, then you can go in and shape them. Now, another thing I will typically do, I like to measure like wherever my sideburn is, how wide is the ear? So, if you don't have any hair right here, like on your face, whether it's a sideburn or part of your hair, if your hair is longer, you can simply measure from here over, so the corner of your eye. So we can go ahead and do that. We'll just do that as our technique. So I'm going to line up my measuring tool right on the corner of my eye. There's one eye width, and then again, I'm going to find where my ear sticks out the furthest. And so it looks like it's 1.5. So there's the half mark. So again, I'm starting right here. So it's 1.5 over. So with this mark that I just made, I know that my ear is going to come out no further than this point. And so from this point, that's where I can shape my ear and draw how it appears. And this is another example of where we're not going to really worry too much about the values in it. We're just kind of sketching that basic placement right now. And then we'll come in later and work on the values. So I'll do the same thing with my right ear. So I'm just going to measure from the corner of my eye to see how far over it would go. So there's one. And a little bit more than half. So on this side, my ear sticks out 1.5, a little bit more than 1.5 from the corner of my eye. So there's the 1 inch or the 1 eye width mark that I'd made. And then my ear's going to come out no further than this. And then again, I have, kind of like a boundary box made with my marking. So I know it is going to be about this tall, but it's not going to come out any further than this. So we'll just sketch this ear in place. And we'll just worry about the values later on this ear as well. Kind of just getting that basic placement in. So now we can see where the face is really starting to come together. Still doesn't look much like me just because we have a lot of values missing. I haven't even really shaped the beard up here. Haven't even added the glasses yet. But I do need to find the sides of my head. So this is another area where it's going to differ for everyone. So you may be measuring um, to like where your skin stops. And then, if you have a lot of hair, you may be measuring out this way with your measuring tool. So what I'm going to do is, based on this center line, I can just measure out this way to kind of find where my hair stops and where my skin stops and my hair starts. You can like sometimes in this case you could also kind of eyeball it like right here where so this is in that temple region. This comes in just a little bit, so it's a little bit more in than where the side of my sideburn was. So if our sideburn or my sideburn was right here, I know that my hair shape roughly it's gonna come in just a little bit. So another important thing, just make sure you're sketching. So that way, if you need to, you can like change some of your lines and everything. So really, this is probably gonna be a little bit higher up. But as far as like the side of the head, that's gonna be important. So like the side of my head is right here. So I'm kind of looking at where it like it's gonna stick out the most. So there's a mark I can find right there. I can also find, where is this curve? If we're trying to find a place to mark it. So I can just mark it going over from that center line. So we'll start on this side. And I want to find this curve. So there's 1, 2.5. So my head sticks out 2.5 eye widths from the center line. Now, what I do need to do, and I forgot to mention this or actually do it, is I need to kind of find out how high up I'm measuring over. So in this case, I kind of started this measurement just under one of these initial marks, which was right here. So from here over, I'm going to measure 2.5 eye widths. So there's 1, 2, and there's my half mark. So again, this is kind of just a matter of connect the dots. You just make these markings and then you essentially just kind of sketch and connect. And so I measured the outside portion of my hair, and then it starts to kind of curve down. And like on my head, I do have the glasses right here, but right here on the edge, this is kind of lining up with where the edge of my beard is. So here's that edge of the beard. So I'm basically just kind of connecting it back into this area. And then we'll want to do the same on the other side. So again, I'm going to measure here over. So I'm just going to try and find that curve in the same spot. So there's 1, 2, and 3/4. So this side is a little bit wider. So there's 1, 2, and 3/4. So I actually had this part marked pretty accurately, just by guessing. And then, so the side of my head is right here. It kind of does the same thing. It just lines up with the edge of the beard. So this is where we're using the spatial relationship ability. You're just trying to find where one thing relates to another. So I have the edge of my head marked right here. And what I've got just the basics of all of my face in. So I could come in and just kind of sketch in the rest of my hairline on this side. And then, what it does, it just kind of cuts in just a little bit on this portion. So right here, it comes in a little bit more than where my sideburn is. So want to notice that. And for the glasses, so if you have any type of like glasses or piercings, jewelry, whatever on your face, you would want to probably put those in at this point. So that's something that you do kind of later on. Other things I would want to think about putting in the eyelid folds. So those, the markings for the underneath portion of my eyes, this is getting a little bit more into the part where we would start with the pencil values. But for example, like my eyelid fold stops at that eye line. So that's pretty easy and clear to see. So I can sketch in that eyelid fold. And then I can do that on the other side. So a little bit more difficult to see here because of the reflections in the glass. Really can't see it at all for the most part. Maybe a little bit right here. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. So that's probably in this place. And then as far as the glasses go, so if you do have glasses and you're adding those to your portrait because you're wearing them in your photo, um, you're just going to use the measuring tool technique and just find out where everything would be. So for example, if I need to know how far down my glasses frames are going to go, I can measure from that eye line down to here. And so using my measuring tool, that is just a little bit less than one full eye width where this frame stops. And then we're going to check this on the other side. So that's pretty much in the exact same spot. So I can make those markings on my drawing. So putting that on my eye line, my glasses frame would stop about here. And then, so I can make the measurement over here, or I could simply just, sketch a really light line that's parallel with my eye line. So I know that my glasses frames would stop about in kind of this lower area that I just drew. And then the height of my glasses frames, so we'll just do the same thing. This is at an angle, so I would want to keep that in mind. So I'm going to just measure upward. So the top part of that frame, since it's a little bit thicker, is half of an eye width. And I'm measuring right above my pupil. So we already have that pupil in, which would be right here. And so, like I said, measuring on that eye line up, about half an eye width. So right here. So this would be the placement of my frame on this side. And then it's probably, yeah, so it's the same on the other side as well. So we'll just find that same marking. So right above my pupil. So that's where my glasses frames would go. So that tells me roughly, where those would be. I would also need to kind of notice, where is this nose piece? How high up is that going to be from my eye line? And so the very middle of my nose piece is right in the middle of that 1/4 of an eye width marking. So I'm going to put that on my eye line, and the nose piece that's a little bit thicker is going to be in this area. And then from there, you could find additional markings like, how far over is this curve. We could also mark where the edges of the glasses are. For right now, I can just kind of sketch in that nose piece. And this dips in a little bit. It does the same on the other side. And essentially, another case of just kind of connecting the dots as you go. So we're just going to sketch in this rough shape of the glasses frames. So again, if you're not wearing any glasses or anything in your photo, you obviously don't have to worry about this. And this part just kind of curls down. So I think you get the basic idea of like how you would approach like any type of like eyewear or anything on your drawing. Then we'd also want to think about the nose pieces. And then you'd also want to consider, how far over is this piece? So again, I can just kind of measure based on the corner of my eye. So that is half an eye width. So pretty clear measurement. So the inside frame portion would, stop about in this spot. And then we'll check it on the other side. So on this one, measurement's a little bit different. It's kind of just slightly past that half an eye width mark. So it's in like this area. So this frame, the lens essentially would end like in this area. Like this. So that's just kind of the basics for measuring the face right now. Next video, we'll focus more on like textures such as like the hair, the eyebrows, values in the eyes, reflections in glass if that's something that you have on your photo, and just kind of the overall values that you're going to include in your drawing.